Well, Aaron, good morning. It's great to have you on today.
Morning.
It'd be great as we jump into this if you could just give a little background on what your relationship is with AI and what your work has looked like, just to give listeners an understanding.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron, I've been in software for over 15 years, so that's my background. I'm writing code, and I love it. Right, I actually really like the process of building things. My career has shifted a lot in the past year with AI, especially. So I've got kind of a love hate relationship going on there. It took away, honestly, one of my biggest passions, which is writing code, because that's what I really enjoyed doing. But it's given me a lot of great opportunities as well. So there's a bit of a balance there. So yeah, I spent most of my career in the mobile app space, building mobile apps and web apps, and that's kind of where I carved out a niche.
Nice.
Rode that wave for from the beginning. So I had an app on the App Store like when iOS 2 was out. So you know, it's been a fun run there.
Tell me a little
Uh,
more. Tell me a little more about that story at the beginning of
yeah,
you getting into iOS, because there was like everyone was like, "I want to build an app. I want to create an app," but you were the
yeah.
person that was actually building and creating apps
I
back in
was
the 2010s.
I was the guy who knew how to build an app, and everyone brought their app ideas to me. Yes, that was my life experience for many years. I got into apps because I think it was my last year of school at UC. I was just tinkering around, learning how to do iOS development. I bought a book. I had a lot of extra credit hours that I wasn't using because of some just the timing with my senior year. So I had plenty of time in my hands. So I was learning how to do iOS apps. Really wanted to build one. A buddy of mine was writing a kid's book, and we were kind of talking, and I was like, "Hey, we should make an interactive kids book. That should be our thing." Like he wanted to get published, I wanted to build an app, and it was this really cool, perfect storm of like a really fun creative project where he has a lot of ideas, and then I'm kind of coming alongside and trying to fine tune. And yeah, I got an app on the App Store, and it was when we launched it, we actually didn't even mean to launch it. We clicked the wrong button, but it went out, and it was on the front page of the App Store because back then new apps were very novel. Um,
What
so
year was this?
this was 2011 when we launched that.
Oh,
So so it was a
I'm
much
way to
different
the app
time.
store. I mean, I have a famous person on the podcast. It's pretty wild.
Famous, very famous. But yeah, I mean, a lot has changed since then. Writing code is not something that I do really at this point. I guide agents to write my code, and that's fundamentally kind of changed how I work, what I do. And so I actually changed roles recently. Now my new role now is like strategy, AI strategy leader for how we build products and services for the company I work at. So I'm not really responsible for generating any of the products that we build. My role is more like cross functional, so I'm kind of helping the full end to end process and figuring out where does AI fit and how we transform our work. And so coding agents are a big part of that, but there's also a lot of other agentic flows and AI tools, but also like where does automation fit, right? It's like there's this balance between AI and automation because everyone wants to use AI to solve a problem, but oftentimes like automation is the way to go. But you can use AI to build those automations. That's been the biggest unlock for me. And I think that's what I like to tell people is, we don't need AI in our stuff. We can use AI to help build stuff. And that's been a pretty cool revelation in the last like 6 months.
So, as you're talking about this role change, right? You went from being primarily on a coding side or working with a team that was doing coding, now in a role where you're doing more advising on, like with the whole company agentic function. The skill set you have. I think what I'm curious about, because I see this, we hear this movement, but I want to hear actually what's
Yeah.
happening. And tell me where I'm wrong. You had a coding background and you started to use different AI tools to help become more effective, right? Doing your code faster, using other tools to help you do that. So you were implementing AI in a certain way, and because you were learning how to take your skill set and optimize it and really maximize it with AI tools, is that what this role you're in now, is it because you have a coding background, or is it more because you have learned how to take all your skills and use AI to maximize your effectiveness? Like what I'd like to hear more
Yeah.
as you think about how you got into what you're in, why are you in it?
Yeah, you know, one of the things I like to say is like it's a shift from like what are you going to build to like so like how are you going to build it to more like what are you going to build. So if you focus on like your outcome, then the like implementation of how it works isn't as important. But knowing how to guide the implementation is actually super critical. So I think what we're seeing now with like Cloud Code is a lot of people can focus on the what, and they can say, okay, this is what I want you to build, and then it builds something and it functionally works or it meets the criteria that you've outlined, and you're like, great, it's done. But I look at the output and I say, well, that wasn't necessarily how I wanted it to be done. So then I guide it, right? I kind of it can go down a million paths, and so that knowledge of like how to build things has become super valuable. And in my career, I've really walked this line between like business and technical. Like I've been pulled to like the business side of things way like throughout my entire career, and I've always tried to pull myself back to the technical. Like my last promotion before this role, I told my boss at the time, or who I was getting promoted into, I said, hey, I will take this, but like I need 30% of my time to be coding. Like I can't be away from that, or else I won't be an effective engineering manager or leader. And I found that to be one of the best decisions I made, because I could stay really close to the how, focus on the strategy of like the what are we going to do, and then you see the big picture as well when you kind of step back at that strategy level of here's kind of the final destination we know we want to get to kind of directionally, and knowing that full like transition from the what to the how is benefited me a lot. And so like that's been a huge help for me, and that's really how I've kind of been able to like I take the business skills, the implementation skills, and now I'm basically like stepping up a level and then saying, okay, how are we going to direct these things to do what we want them to do? So that's I think that's really where those like that background in software is becomes super valuable.
How how much are you seeing? So what I'm hearing is you because your coding background, you're able to get an output. Like if Claude says, "Hey, you need to host this in this place, and you need to
Yeah.
use Supabase to put your data in," like you see these different places, and you're like, well, I don't know if I would do it this way. What do you what do you think are the risks or the impacts when somebody that's a much more your junior in terms of what they know how to do from a coding perspective, getting their hands on something like Claude, creating an online application? If you were to give advice to someone asking for a friend, right? What are the dangers there when people are building things without understanding the what, and they just are looking at the or sorry, they don't understand the how. They're just like, here's the what, I
Yeah.
want the output, but they don't understand the how behind it.
Yeah, it's pretty low stakes for the most part. So it's sometimes it comes down to like I know what's going on under the hood, so like I want it to run a certain way. Sometimes I'm just like do whatever you want. Like I don't care. Like I've got so many things I've built where it's like I don't even know what the code looks like. I don't even look at it, right? And I'm focusing on like functionality. So I think there's definitely like a place for that. In like the enterprise, probably not. I think there's a little bit more like you need more quality around that. But I do think it has value. So like I'm really like a big fan of this concept of like product managers building prototypes to help understand if the features that they want to build or ideas they want to build have teeth. Like let's not even put them into the engineer's hands until we realize like, okay, I'm going to build a quick prototype, interact with it. It's like, yes, this meets kind of like the vision, that solves the problem that we're trying to solve. And so I think there's a lot of value there. Like they're not going to understand any of what's going on underneath, but they can actually take that as like a spec to hand off to the engineers and say, here's how I want it. Like here's how I want it the user experience to work. And then the engineers can go and actually direct their agents to build it the way it will work within like the larger systems. So I think there's kind of a time and place. You know, yesterday I was building something for, I wanted to build like the ability for my agents to send me arbitrary like push notifications to my phone. So like when I have automation set up, it can just like send me a ping on my phone. I didn't want to do a text message. I just wanted to like use like the push notification feature on iOS. And so I had to build something, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then I built like a codex skill for it to invoke that service. And like the way it was doing it was like looking for a specific place on the computer where the service was hosted, which is like not how I wanted it to work. I wanted it to be like a global service on the computer that anything could kind of execute. But like for anyone who doesn't really know like how those things work, they wouldn't know the difference between the two. For me, I didn't want like this dependency on a specific file to sit in a specific place. I wanted anything to say send a push notification now. So it's like those kinds of things where I have an end state in mind and like I know how it's going to work over time. So like the first solution would have worked, but it would have broken at some point. I move a folder around, the skill forgets where the thing is, it just stops working. So if like somebody without that background is gonna like they're gonna have to start like, okay, help me figure out what's going on. They're gonna be spending a
Yeah,
lot
that's
of like
me suffering.
debug cycles.
Right.
So, it's harmless for the most part, and then like you just it just really just depends on what the outcome is, and part of this is just like hobbyist set sort of things. Like I do it because I have fun. Like it's, and I if I see the bad thing, I'm like, ugh, I can't let that go. That's just a personal thing sometimes.
But I think your point, it's interesting because the skills you have, you're able to see that broken code or code that will break in the future
Yeah.
and debug it very early. When you are talking to people that are now just building things for fun and they're doing their own code, they're pushing things out, creating online applications, websites, so forth. How much how much code do you suggest somebody learns to make sure that they just aren't like is there like an equilibrium, right? I think about like supply and demand curve from college, the classes I slept through, like
Yeah.
how much does someone really need to learn in order to be the most effective with where AI is today, or even maybe is that going to change in a couple years? Like, what would you tell someone?
It depends on what you want to do. Like, if you're just doing it for fun, like, I would say learn nothing and just have fun with it. If you're doing it because you want to build, like, really robust applications that you're going to sell to people or something, like you're going to sell a service or whatever, then yeah, I think it's worth, like, understanding, like, some of the basics. I couldn't, we could probably spend an hour on the basics of, like, here are the things you need to be thinking about. But, like, at the same time, you can also, like, ask your agent, like help me understand this, explain to me how this works, like explain the flow to me, explain your architecture decisions. I'm working on this like open source library that it's related to some of the work I'm doing, and I had this idea in my head of like, okay, I want to do like an open source version because it's like a thing that anyone can host anywhere, but then I'm gonna like potentially do like a SaaS version where like I can just host it myself and then charge like a small fee. And like the way I'm going to post it is like, could you vibe code this yourself? Yes, you could, but like if you don't want to, here's a solution, and you can just pay me $5 a month. And so I've never like built a SaaS product from the ground up. Like I've never gone through that process. So I was like, hey, tell me everything I'm missing in order to make this like a fully enabled SaaS product. Like what would I have to do for this to be realistic? And then it listed like 10 things, 4 high priority, 3 medium, 2 low. It's like, okay, cool. These are a bunch of things I hadn't even thought about. So like I don't know how to do all of those things, but I know how to like ask the right questions to then be like, okay, we need to do these security things. We need to think about these flows, or whatever that might look like. So that's my mental model, is like you use the agent to help you too. It's not just a generation tool, it's like a teaching tool. So I think that's a really, maybe if you want to understand the depths of it and kind of understand where some of those trade-offs are, and even just asking it like, hey, what are the trade-offs you've made with these decisions? And it will tell you like, here's the pros, here's the cons. Because every engineering decision you make is a trade-off. And so you just want to understand like, what's that balance and what are you giving up in order to get something?
Yeah, and those questions you're asking, I know that those sound so natural for you, but that is a you don't know what you don't know, and because you know
Yeah.
some things, right? you were saying, hey, I know these things occurred and I need to ask this to make sure I understand the decisions that they made to get to this place and what my risks are. And those are, I think, for someone who is getting into it and doing more coding with some of these AI platforms, having some of those questions, and they'll be in the show notes, anyone can pull those, but learning to ask those and learn, because like you're saying, if you can look at your process as you build things, not as taking advantage of the tool to get the output, but instead taking advantage of the process to learn what's occurring and asking those questions, then it's going to be more about the learning than it is about just getting the output that you want, right? And how do we avoid being
Yeah.
intellectually lazy and actually engage with the process and learn what's going on behind the scenes?
Yeah.
Well, you're starting to talk a little about your personal projects, and I know one of the reasons that I really wanted to talk to you is because you'd set up a Mac Mini. Everyone's talking about their Mac Mini, how they're getting Mac Minis, and people are putting these different. Was it Iron Claw? Is that the big one that
Open Claw. Yeah.
or Open Claw? That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
That people are putting Open Claw on their Mac Minis and letting it run wild and do all these crazy things, and people are like, "I used my Open Claw and I made $1 million in a month."
Yeah.
But that's not what's actually happening. Tell me, you got a Mac Mini, and instead of just talking about that, I would like to talk a little more about what are the personal projects you're working on, and hear about that, and then it'll probably lead into your Mac Mini as well.
Yeah. I've actually had a Mac Mini for like 10 years now. So like I'm a little bit ahead of the curve.
Go ahead, the curve's so cool.
Yeah, so cool. Uh, I mean, I've always done a lot of like tinkering home server stuff. Like that's just been like an interest of mine. Like my biggest open source project is actually like a plugin for a system called Homebridge, which is like connecting smart devices that aren't compatible with Apple's HomeKit to like, so it kind of provides that bridge. And so you basically have this like hub where you have to have a machine to host it on. And then you have all these plugins that kind of make the connecting things to like the downstream like APIs for the things that don't have HomeKit enabled. And so there is this thing called Bond, which is like an IR blasting kind of device where you can like record like dumb devices remotes into it, and then you can basically get access to it in your app and then control it from your phone. So I built a plugin that works with the Homebridge that allows it to, you know, translate into the home app. So then I don't have to ever leave the home app to control my dumb devices that aren't connected. So it's kind of this whole like chain of things.
What's a practical example of one of those
Yeah.
dumb things that are made smart?
So like a fan remote, right? You got those little dinky remotes. It's got 3 buttons on it. It controls the speed, maybe the lights. And so what I do is I take that remote and I point it at, like I go into the app and I say, hey, record this, you know, device. I shoot it at the little IR thing. It records whatever the frequencies are, and then I basically create like a fan device in that app experience, and then my bridge like converts that into HomeKits. So that one, I think at its peak was getting like a few hundred downloads a week, and maybe it still is. I haven't checked in a while, so it's one of those ones that kind of like I just had a curiosity and I wanted to build it, and people wanted it, so that was fun. And so I needed that.
Disney's smart house, and your house can turn against you.
Yes.
And
Yes.
but all the trash can like suck into the floor, so it's pretty nice when you can really have smart house.
That we reference Disney Smart House in this house way too often, so it's one of the evergreen references in our house. I've got too many smart things. So anyway, it's been a hobby project of mine. It's just like smart home stuff, right? And so I wanted a Mac Mini, and so I've had one for a long time. And so, you know, what's interesting is I started building like small utilities with Claude Code. So we have a meal planning app that we use called Paprika. We just got this like wall calendar thing called Skylight, which allows us to have like our family calendar and like the kids' chores, and like they can like check off their chores, and then they've got rewards that they can redeem based on the chores that they've done. And it's a cool little thing, and so there's like a meal planning feature in there, and my wife was like, hey, it'd be really cool if we could like sync up our Paprika meal planning that we've used for like 15 years into this system. I was like, of course, we'll just talk to Claude.
Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. You know, so I'm like, within 10 minutes, she's like, wait, I got to go work on this now. This is my new task. And so I built this little utility that basically does like a syncing process where it will sync the data from Paprika into this like Skylight thing, and vice versa. If you like add groceries on the Skylight, it'll like go to our main grocery list, which is pretty cool.
That's cool.
But I need a place to run it. You can't just like I can open up my laptop and click sync or click run, and it would do it one time. But then like I don't have to open my laptop to get this to. I just like always want it to be running. So having like a Mac Mini or Raspberry Pi or something was like is a way for me to like host those kinds of projects. So that's really where I use it. I don't use it to run models. I don't use it to run. I have done like an OpenClaw thing, and I'm using it more for like doing some background research for me that sends me a digest of links every day. So nothing crazy. But having that running is just a place for me to like host things. And so as any idea that I have, I don't have to think about like where am I going to put it. It's like I'll just run it on the Mac, and if it dies, and I'll just, or if I stop using it, then who cares, right? It's like a very low stakes thing.
And what are the benefits of running it on a Mac Mini or another device versus like buying server space somewhere, letting it live there, letting it run? What are the pros and cons?
I mean, you can do that. It's not gonna. There's a lot of free tiers to do that. I think every provider probably gives like a hobbyist tier that you can host things on. I think your website's probably hosted on a free tier. Like I'm hosting on like a Cloudflare free tier for my website. I think for me, it's just about like safety and guardrails. Like I'm doing. I just built another little utility where like part of my budgeting process is. I look at the transactions and I categorize everything, but like the ones that always drive me crazy are like Amazon and Target and Venmo, because I never know. I can never predict what those things are. I have to go and look to see what those purchases were to categorize them correctly, and it just drives me crazy. And so, literally this weekend, I built a service on my Mac Mini that will. Or no, I built a like a script or a CLI tool that my Codex automation will call every day. That looks, it'll go and use like a web scraping tool called Playwright. It'll literally open up a browser, go into Amazon, scrape the page for my orders, go into Target, scrape the page for my orders, look at the budget API, and then break down the transactions into those different like into separate transactions for each item in my cart for each item that I purchased. That way, it'll put in a note in my budgeting tool what the item name was. So now all I have to do is go into my budgeting tool, and it's like, hey, everything's already broken out. I just have to do categorization. And so like I don't want that data like spewed across the internet.
Right.
It's in my computer. It's like a little safe place I can play and try these things out. And like yeah, the AI is going to get some of this data, and it's like, if they want to know what I spent at Amazon, great, that's fine. But it's just like a very safe place for me to operate. And then I can like build on that too. So now my next step is, well, instead of it running and then breaking it down to transactions, like I actually wanted to choose like, hey, look at the categories I have, suggest a category for the item that I purchased. So that way next time I go into my budgeting app, it's already even pre-categorized and I just have to click like approve. So that took like a whole 20-minute, 30-minute process that I do every week when I budget. And now it's just like automated on my Mac Mini.
It's incredible. And it's like, how does your AI respond to Venmo when it gets in and it's like, smiley face, peach, trophy? I mean, maybe you haven't done that one yet. Because if you try to interpret my Venmo, like 1,000 years in the future, they're going to be talking about our Venmos and our transactions and trying to draw truth from them. And we're like, wow.
It's all nonsensical.
So those okay. So those are some fun ones you're working on. Don't tell my partner because she's gonna want to know all the different things you're doing for our budgets, and I don't want that. So, maybe we delete that.
It's a great way to like if your partner says like, "Wouldn't it be cool if if you just listen for a second," and then it's like, "Great, let me go try to build that." So if you start to like ideate with them a little bit, then you can start to really win some points because now. My wife is very happy that her syncing thing works and that she can just see the groceries for the week or see the meals for the week and not have to like do anything manual. And she would have never thought of that. So like just figuring out those opportunities for fun little things.
Yeah. That point's interesting where now because you can do so many things. Like you had a background, you'd always say, "Man, I wish I could do this, this, and this." And now you have all these different tools that can do all these pieces. Talk me through a little bit. What has been the most powerful part for you as it's become easier to have agents writing code for you, doing API pulls, doing all these pieces in the background for you daily? What have been some of the biggest aha moments for you? Or like, wow, I couldn't do this before. I can do this now. This is really cool.
That it's just that, right? Like we talked about, like, everyone used to come to me and say, "Hey, I have this app idea," and I would just usually say, "That's awesome, man," and just like walk away, right? Like I now I can actually be like, "Oh, interesting. Let's go build it and see if it has legs." Like that barrier is gone, and so any idea I have, I just pull up my phone, start typing away into Claude or Codex and say like, "Hey, this is an idea I have." Sometimes I'd use like the chat feature and just like chat with it and see like, let's tease out this idea. Sometimes I go right into the code feature and like, "Hey, build a plan for how this will work." And then I can look at that plan and say, let's tweak this. And actually that's, one of the more interesting things. One of the best features of any coding tool is the plan mode. Like, if you're going to do anything different about how you work, use the plan mode. Because what's interesting about that is like you can see the full end to end. Like, here's what I'm going to do. Like, if you were to say, I've got this idea, and you just go into the coding agent feature, it's going to start building. It's going to start making choices. It's going to look at things, and you're just going to be like, sure, I guess that's right. But with like a plan mode, you can like see the full end to end run. It will tell you exactly what it's going to do. And then so you can make corrections before it went and did the wrong thing. So,
And I want to make sure I understand. Like
yeah.
a lot of my workflow will be talking in my Claude chat, building out the whole idea,
Yep.
getting kind of a starter package that I then give to my terminal, like Claude Code in my terminal to
Yeah.
start working and everything. Tell me a little more about when you say plan piece.
Yep.
Walk through that workflow a little more practically, whether it's in chat with Codex or with Claude. Like, give an example of one of those and how that looks usually.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of described it a little bit. So, like in your chat mode, you're like you're trying to figure out what you want it to build, but it's not thinking about like the coding aspect. It's more thinking about like the implementation or like how it will feel and work. In the coding agents, both Claude Code and Codex, you can switch on plan mode, which is basically let's build a clear, like a concrete markdown file of like what we're going to do. And so it de-risks the build and it de-risks like the waste of tokens. So if you're like on a token crunch, you want like the work to actually end up in a place where you feel like it's going to get to the right solution. And so it will tell you exactly what it's going to build. Then you get a chance to kind of critique it and say, well, actually, let's do this. Oh, I didn't think about that. Let's change this. And then we'll iterate on the plan. So I probably iterate on plans like 4 or 5 times before I say, okay, now go and do this. And then it becomes more of like a one-shot thing. Like you just click go and it just like builds. Like you don't have to interact with it as it's building because you've already done the interaction piece. And so for me, it's really helpful as like a dad. I get off work, spending time with my family, helping out. And so like I'm on my phone, just like I look at the plan, okay, let's change this, and I put my phone away. And then I know it's working in the background.
As opposed
And
to
part
seeing
of
the terminal hitting one, hitting one,
yeah,
hitting one, you're like sending everything through.
yeah,
What is
no,
it?
so I let it go completely, and then I get the plan going, and then I come back to it and it's done. And then I can test it and stuff, but like the whole entire build process was done without me being in front of my computer.
And I think that goes back to what we discussed earlier of when you have a certain competency in the world of coding, you're able to look at the full stack and say, okay, I see this piece, this piece, this piece. I want this piece different. What are some, if you were to recommend to newbies in this world some resources to read or places to learn so they can get better? Because the token piece is a big problem, right? It's like I go through this, it'll eat up 10,000 tokens in a flash, doing stuff that's really dumb. Where it's like, oh yeah, I
Yeah.
shouldn't have done it that way, and you're like, yeah, you shouldn't have done it the way, you idiot. Aren't you supposed to be smart? Like, uh, where would you send people to get a better idea in that planning phase to be more efficient with how they plan, so when they actually feed it into their whatever coding agent they're using, that they get better results?
I don't have any good like resources to be honest. Like I'm very much a learn by doing kind of person. So for me, it's like try out that feature, and the best way to evaluate it is to like know what the outcome should be. So if you give it a task and you're trying to understand like how does this work, I always tell people like use a task that you've done before, that you know how it should work, you know the outcome, and then use and let the agent do that process for you, or like try to go through that process, or try to have it build something you know how to do. And so for you, that might be like I want it to look and feel a very specific way, or like I've already built it elsewhere, or like I've sketched this out. So how do I get it to get to that point? And so what's great about that plan mode feature is you can also talk about the user experience too. So you can be like, hey, I want it to like look and feel like this. Here's some really important considerations for me. Then when it goes to make decisions, because this is where the plan helps, is like it's making this 1,000 decisions for you as it's building. It's making choices like I can do X or Y, and it's making these choices at all times. And so the best thing you can do is give it as much information to help make the choice as if it were you. And so what's important to you should be in that plan. And so for me, it's like just try it out, like tinker with it, give it a run, and you'll start to see that you can actually let it go and you can kind of walk away. And that for me is really helpful because I don't want to be sitting in front of my computer at all times. Like that's a really important thing for me, which is a big reason why I have a Mac Mini that's running a Codex app that I can run automations on, and I can access through the ChatGPT app and go into the Codex feature and like literally program on my computer from my phone. Because for me, it's about the important piece is I know what it's going to build and I want it to like give my input, and then I just don't want to think about the build anymore.
So when someone, this is really good, and we'll kind of wrap up with this because what I'm hearing from you is you've had 15 plus years that you've been doing tons of coding. Now that you've gotten these tools, it's unlocked so much for you, but it's taken 15 years of hard work, right? Plus more than that, honestly, because you've
Sure.
worked
Yeah.
for 20 years at this point. When somebody inevitably listens to this and they say, I'm gonna download the terminal, I'm gonna install Claude on my terminal, and I'm gonna start working on this, or I'm gonna buy a Mac Mini and let Codex run every night, and they get stuck and they're like, I don't know what to do next. What's an easy thing when somebody is like stuck, they're
Yeah.
frustrated? What is a way that they can get unstuck?
Ask their agent, like ask Claude.
Well,
For me, what I would recommend is like I actually wouldn't recommend the terminal for most people. It's not really like a like what I would actually recommend is go download the Claude app and use the code tab in the Claude app. It's going to be just as like capable as the terminal, but it's going to be easier to use, and like the way it presents information is actually I use that primarily. I rarely use the terminal, honestly. Like I use the Claude app and I use the Codex Mac app because it presents like formatted markdown files. So for visually for me it helps. I can read things a little bit better. It works a little easier. So my biggest recommendation is like don't feel the need to jump into like the CLI, like the terminal experience. Like use the Claude app or the Codex app if you want to do some coding stuff, because it's really easy to use and it's pretty capable, and it's the barrier to entry is pretty low there. So
that's great. That's great advice. Well, any any other advice that you want to give to the audience over the future of AI, thoughts, any closing remarks before we wrap up?
yeah, I mean, I would just say like always just try get your hands on stuff. Like don't go take a course. Like that's my advice. Like you don't need a course. I've looked at some of the courses. I I've been asked at work like what courses should we have people take? And my answer is almost always like go try it out, or find somebody who like is doing this and like sit with them for an hour and watch them work. That's the biggest unlock for anyone I've ever seen. Like having people sit with me for 30 minutes and watch how I work, the things that they end up doing, it's amazing. Like they'll come back to me 2 days later and be like, I built all this stuff now. Like you showed me how to like work differently. So, find out people in your life who are like doing this, grab some time with them, just like build with them, and you're gonna learn way more than you will if you try to take a course.
I love that the end of our AI conversation is about connecting with people and not just AI, right? And that's what can lead
Yeah,
to a lot of learning. So, well,
love
thank you
that.
for being on the show today. If people want to learn more or follow more of what you're doing, where's the best place if people want to connect with you?
Yeah, I've been putting some of my projects on my website that I had Claude built for me a couple weeks ago. It's aaronsap.dev. I've got a couple links to some GitHubs in there, and then I built like a little game that the old school Mac game that I grew up playing that I rebuilt with Claude. That's hosted on that website as well, so you can check that out.
Great. Well, thanks for being on today. Good luck with your smart house. If it turns into like an indoor tornado or something, you need help,
I'll
just
give you a
call
call.
me. I'll call the
Yeah.
police. I'm not gonna come over there. So,
All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate
take
it.
care, Aaron. All right, take care.
Bye.